Hello, Gold participants and listeners from around the world. I'm Kristen Schwartz, licensed midwife and MC here at Gold Learning. And today I have the great pleasure of sitting down with Dr. Jillian Vinall to talk about her upcoming presentation. Welcome, Dr. Jillian Vinall. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
It is wonderful to have you here, and we are very excited about the presentation. Lots of good information in there, I'm sure. But before we jump into the topic itself, can you tell our listeners, because we are, our audience is worldwide, so where in the world are you located?
I am located in Calgary, Alberta, Canada,
Hmm.
situated at the Alberta Children's Hospital here and affiliated with the University of Calgary.
How wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us here today. So before we jump into the presentation, what would you like our listeners to know about you and your background?
Well, I'm proud that I have been contributing to the field of pediatric pain now for over a decade. I began my training during my honors thesis in psychology at York University in Toronto, Ontario, Canada,
Mhm.
under the supervision of Dr. Rebecca Ply-Riddell. Then I built upon that training experience during my PhD in neuroscience at the University of British Columbia under the supervision of Dr. Ruth Grunow and Dr. Stephen Miller. And I'm currently leading projects in the Department of Anesthesia at the University of Calgary under the supervision of Melanie Noel and Neves Razek. So over the course of these training experiences, I've gained expertise in both acute and chronic pain, the transitions in between from infancy through to early adulthood. I began working in healthy infants undergoing routine vaccinations, moved on to a clinical population of preterm infants studying effects of repeated early life pain, and I'm currently examining acute and chronic pain and the transitions in between in both children and adolescents. So many years of experience and expertise in the field of pediatric pain that I'm bringing to the table, but today I'll be predominantly focusing on my PhD work in premature newborns.
Fascinating. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And while you were talking, something came to my mind here is like a few decades ago, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, many researchers were of the opinion that, premature babies did not experience pain as older babies or adults. Of course, nowadays we know this is not true. They do experience pain. But you are looking now at the next step, so to speak. What comes next, right? The long-term effect of that neonatal pain in the developing brain. Tell me a little bit about that. How did that research field, is that a relatively new research field? How did that come to be of interest to you? And tell me little bit about the field in general.
Sure, absolutely. So you're absolutely right. It wasn't all that long ago that we believed, or it was still believed, that infants could not feel pain. And it was really out of parental advocacy that the whole field of pediatric pain research was born. And so we're still learning new things all of the time. And in terms of long-term effects of neonatal pain, this is also a still relatively new area of research. When I
Mhm.
started my PhD with Dr. Ruth Grunow, she was of the unique opinion at that time, and this was, oh, I don't know, about just 7 years back.
Mhm.
She had the unique opinion that the repeated exposures to pain early in life could be disrupting brain maturation, leading to cognitive and behavioral problems we know to be prevalent in the premature population. But a lot of people didn't agree with this opinion. Many didn't believe that pain over and above how early the babies were born, how sick they
Right.
were, medications they were exposed to, brain injuries they incurred, they didn't believe that pain could be more important for the developing brain. So this is an important question to ask is how relevant is pain
Mhm.
and the management of pain for the developing brain? And so this is what we've concentrated in our research and have provided some of the first evidence to show these relationships. And I'll go over that in my talk today.
Absolutely fascinating. And I can imagine that what your research is showing has huge impact also then of how care is given in the hospital. Of course, the emphasis there is that these premature babies, they have to go through all these different, often very painful procedures, medical procedures, right? And the staff is very focused on giving them the medical attention and those procedures that these babies need. And of course, also want to make sure that the pain is, kept to a minimum or, managed. But also then looking ahead and saying, okay, so what does that also mean for the future development, right? For these
Hmm.
preterm babies.
Yes, so this is a tricky area because these painful procedures, as you mentioned, are absolutely required. They are
Right.
life-saving procedures. So it's not necessarily that they can be avoided altogether,
No.
but perhaps they can be reduced. So this is one area that we can possibly improve treatment in our care for infants born very preterm.
Hmm.
In terms of pain management, I mean, obviously this research has really led to the idea that we need to bolster this and make sure that we are managing pain for all of these repeated invasive procedures. What is best practice, I think, now is sort of the next area of research that we really need to put further investment into. So we have a number of strategies that we know are relatively effective in reducing
Right.
behavioral responses to pain, but I don't think we know at this point of time which of these strategies are the most protective for the developing
Mm.
brain. And so
Mm.
this is an area that I think is sort of our next step in exploring
The
further.
next step of exploring. So then you will be back for another presentation here at
Oh,
Colby.
I hope so. I would love to.
How long are you following these infants for, in your study? So how long are you
So I should
um
emphasize that so far, because I'm still a
right.
trainee, so a lot of this research has been led out of the labs of Dr. Ruth Grunow and Stephen Miller. So this
Right.
is their projects, and they follow the infants up until they're about 18 years of age is the plan. So it's
Wow.
it's a lifetime of looking at the continual impact of pain on the developing brain and outcomes of children as they transition to becoming late adolescence, early adulthood. And there are different stages with the cohorts that they follow. So I
Hmm.
think the oldest they've looked at so far is up to 8 years, but the intention is that they're going to follow them into adolescence.
How wonderful. That is a very valuable research right there. And how big is the population, the population of infants that you follow right now?
So their most recent population that they recruited is about 200 infants. So it's a pretty massive study and following, and they get a lot of details. So in addition to neuroimaging, they do developmental testing. They've collected saliva to look at genetic modifiers of outcomes. Uh, I I honestly can't even remember all the things they do. Behavioral testing, interactions with parents. So to follow 200
Mhm.
children this rigorously is not a small task, and they're doing an exceptional job there of following up and looking at these neonatal and concurrent factors that are predicting outcomes in these kids.
How wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now let's talk a little bit about the presentation itself. So let us know a little bit more about the presentation here for us.
Sure. So I really wanted to try and cover as much of the gamut and provide as much education as I can in my talk. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of pediatric pain and then go into how pain is typically processed and how it's different for infants born very preterm, how their brain is vulnerable to these repeated painful exposures, providing evidence from both animal models and humans. I'm going to talk about some of our relationships showing the long-term effects of pain on the developing brain, the most recent papers to come out of some of the labs in this area, and oh, also the possible mechanisms linking neonatal pain and the brain. So, is it stress hormones, inflammation, or other factors? And then I'll also cover what are some of the things that we can do to manage
Mhm.
pain in the NICU and what we found in terms of positive and negative effects of these interventions that we're applying. And then finally, I think I'll just end with sort of our current research and future directions that we can go. And that should hopefully give you a very good idea of where the field came from, where we are at, and where we are going.
And where you're going, when you're going, that's wonderful. So before I let you go, my very last question here, what are you hoping that our delegates will take away from this presentation? If you had to pick one of the many things you will be talking about. What do you think is one of the takeaways that you're hoping for them?
I really hope the takeaway message they get is that we've now provided strong evidence that there is a relationship between neonatal pain and the developing brain over and above how early the babies are born, how sick they are, medications they're exposed to, just keeping that awareness in mind. So if they are clinicians, when they go back to the NICU, they know to keep pain management at the utmost priority in taking care of the infants.
Well, Dr. Jillian Vinall, thank you so much for sitting down here with me today and answering some of my questions and spending time here with us at Gold.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure, and I can't wait to share all of our exciting research with you.
Yeah, and we're all looking forward to this presentation. The presentation is titled Long-Term Effects of Neonatal Pain on the Developing Brain. And this presentation is part of the Pain Management in the NICU add-on here at Gold. For more information on this presentation and on the other presentations in the lecture pack, please visit goldlearning.com. Thank you again, Dr. Jillian Vinall, for this chat with me today. And thank you to all our listeners here as well. Bye bye.